Chapter 4. The music countdown show wrapped up later than expected. Jihyun and Taehyung had been called in as substitute MCs, filling a gap left by an absent host. It was routine work, scripted smiles, rehearsed banter, professionalism polished to perfection. From the outside, nothing seemed out of place. But tension lingered beneath the surface. Once the cameras stopped rolling and the stage lights dimmed, staff moved quickly, dismantling equipment and ushering idols back to their respective waiting rooms. Taehyung checked his phone, then turned to his manager. "Hyung, I need about 15 minutes, he said evenly. "There's something I have to take care of. Can you wait?" His manager studied him for a moment before nodding. "Don't be long." Taehyung didn't hesitate. He headed straight down the hallway toward Eclipse's waiting area. He knocked once before pushing the door open. Inside, Jihyun was already changed, his stylist packing away tools while staff exchanged quiet goodbyes. The atmosphere was relaxed. Work completed, another schedule survived. Taehyung bowed politely. "Thank you for your hard work." He waited until most of the staff filtered out before turning his attention fully to Jihyun. "Hey," Taehyung said, voice calm but deliberate. "Can you step aside with me for a minute?" Jihyun looked at him, something unreadable flickering across his face. After a brief pause, he nodded. "Give me a second," he told his manager before following Taehyung out. They walked in silence, footsteps echoing faintly against the polished floor, until Taehyung stopped near a quiet corner away from cameras and staff traffic. No small talk. No easing into it. Taehyung exhaled slowly. "What's going on between you and seojun?" The words landed heavily. Jihyun's jaw tightened instantly, his expression hardening. He didn't answer. Taehyung sighed, rubbing a hand over the back of his neck. "I already talked to seojun," he said. "I know." Jihyun's eyes sharpened. "So what?" he shot back. "You're here to tell me to break up with him?" "That's not what this is about," Taehyung replied, steady but firm. "Who you date isn't my business." "Then why are you here?" Jihyun snapped. "Because in this industry," Taehyung said quietly, "love doesn't exist without consequences. And if this ever comes out, it won't just hurt you. It'll destroy him." Jihyun clenched his fists. "We know exactly what we're doing." "No," Taehyung said, shaking his head. "You don't." Jihyun scoffed. "You don't get to decide that." Taehyung stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You think knowing you're careful is enough? You think intention matters when the media gets involved." Jihyun's voice turned bitter. "What exactly are you trying to imply, Taehyung?" Taehyung held his gaze, unflinching. "I'm saying you're not ready for the risk you're taking." Silence stretched between them. Then Taehyung spoke again, slower this time. "Honestly, I don't care what happens to you." Jihyun stiffened. "But I care about seojun," Taehyung continued. "He's kind. He's too trusting. And what happened with Song Yuri?" His jaw tightened. "That backlash hit him harder than he'll ever admit." Jihyun swallowed. "I don't know how serious you are about him," Taehyung said, voice low but cutting. "But if you're not prepared to protect him, really protect him, then don't you dare become the reason his career falls apart." The words lingered in the air, heavy and unforgiving. Jihyun didn't respond. His expression remained carefully blank, but something behind his eyes fractured, quietly, invisibly. Taehyung took a step back, the confrontation over. "Think about it," he said finally. "Because once something breaks in this industry, it never fully heals." He turned and walked away, footsteps fading down the corridor. Jihyun stayed where he was. Alone. The question he had been avoiding surfaced clearly in his mind. Was loving seojun worth destroying him? With a wrap-up of for tomorrow's promotions and post-release events, seojun was finally able to shift his focus back to his activities as an idol. The company had handled the dating scandal with calculated precision. There was backlash from parts of his fandom, there was no denying that, but it was quickly drowned out by an even louder wave of support. And in the end, the rumor was false. The way the PR team navigated the situation brought results seojun hadn't expected. The buzz surrounding the controversy pushed him further into the spotlight, making him one of the most talked-about rookie actors of the year. His name trended, articles multiplied, and industry insiders began to take him more seriously. His value as an actor undeniably increased. His idol image, however, took a small hit. It wasn't enough to derail his career, but it was enough to leave a mark. Eventually, both his company and Song Yuri Nuna's agency released a joint statement, firmly denying the dating rumors. They clarified that Yuri saw seojun as nothing more than a junior she was fond of, almost like a younger brother. To support the claim, behind-the-scenes photos were released, laughing moments on set, group shots with the cast, casual and harmless. The director and fellow co-actors also spoke up, subtly but effectively reinforcing the narrative. Public opinion shifted. The story faded. From the outside, everything looked settled. "What are you thinking so hard about?" Yunho interrupted, his tone light and teasing. "Nothing," seojun replied automatically. The practice room was occupied by Yunho, Akira, and Jung. Only Taehyung was missing. He'd be joining them later after finishing his schedule at Music Countdown. The mirrors reflected their movements as music echoed through the studio, loud enough to drown out stray thoughts, or so seojun hoped. He stretched his shoulders absently, eyes lingering on his own reflection. A part of him, one he didn't allow himself to acknowledge too often, had wished he'd been offered that MC spot too. Not for the exposure, not for the headlines, but for the simple, dangerous possibility of standing beside Jihyun again, even under bright lights and careful smiles. But he already knew why the offer hadn't come his way. The company wanted numbers. Buzz, contras. Two on-screen rival group leaders, sharing the stage as substitute MCs, it was perfect optics. Safe, controlled, profitable. That was why the slots had gone to Jihyun Hyung and Taehyung Hyung. seojun swallowed and turned the music up a little louder. He was also grateful to Taehyung Hyung for keeping his relationship with Jihyun a secret, for never letting it slip even once. Taehyung joined the practice later that night, and they rehearsed until well past midnight. By the time their managers dropped them back at the apartment, exhaustion clung to seojun's limbs like a second skin. Before going to bed, he sent Jihyun a message. "Just got back from practice." He set his phone aside and headed to the bathroom to freshen up, changing into his pajamas out of habit. When he returned to his room, he checked his phone again. No reply. Maybe he's busy, seojun thought. Usually, no matter how packed their schedules were, they'd exchange at least one message before sleeping, something small, something grounding. And as far as seojun knew, Jihyun didn't have any new projects lined up right now. He stared at the screen a moment longer before locking it. A yawn escaped him as exhaustion finally caught up, his body giving in even as his mind lingered. Seojun lay down and turned off the light, telling himself it was nothing. Still, sleep came slower than usual. The next morning, the first thing Seojun did after waking up was reach for his phone. No reply. He frowned slightly. It wasn't unusual for them to go days without properly talking. Conflicting schedules had trained them into patience. Long silences were something they understood, something they'd learned to live with. And yet, something about this felt different. It was hard to explain. There was no clear reason, no missed call or abrupt message to point at. Just a quiet sense of unease settling in his chest, persistent and unwelcome. Still, Seojun didn't text again. He didn't want to seem clingy. Didn't want to be the one who overreached, who imagined problems where there were none. So he locked his phone, pushed the feeling aside, and told himself it was nothing. Even as the uneasiness refused to fade. Later that afternoon, after practice, Eclipse decided to eat out instead of ordering takeout like they usually did. They were craving something authentic, so they headed to a nearby diner and booked a private room to avoid attracting attention. Seojun excused himself to use the washroom. He had taken barely a few steps into the corridor when he stopped. A familiar back stood near one of the private rooms. Broad shoulders, neatly pressed coat, hands folded together in front of him in a way that always appeared calm, but Seojun knew better. His chest tightened as recognition settled in. For months, 4 months since he had last seen him this close, without a screen between them, without carefully measured messages and missed calls. His heart surged ahead of his reason. Hyung. The word caught in his throat. He swallowed, forcing himself to remember where they were, who they were now. Jihyun sunbae. Jihyun stiffened. The reaction was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Seojun noticed. When Jihyun turned, shock washed over his face, quick, unguarded, followed by relief so raw it nearly made Seojun step closer. Then it disappeared. His expression smoothed into something professional, distant, carefully neutral. Seojun, Jihyun said, voice even. What are you doing here? The words landed heavier than Seojun expected. Not you're here too. Not it's been a while. Just that. I came with my team for lunch, Seojun replied, adjusting his tone instinctively, mirroring the formality Jihyun had chosen. This place is pretty far from your company. We're here for work, Jihyun answered after a brief pause. A meeting. The door behind him opened. Moon Chae-young stepped out, phone in hand, already mid-conversation before she noticed Seojun. He bowed immediately. Good afternoon, Chae-young sunbeam. She smiled warmly. You don't have to be so formal. Behind her, the door hadn't fully closed. Through the narrow gap, Seojun caught sight of 2 figures seated inside, Jihyun's manager and Chae-young's manager, files spread across the table, laptops open. So it really was work. There was no misunderstanding there. Yet the distance still felt deliberate. Jihyun stood rigidly beside Chae-young, maintaining a careful amount of space. Not close enough to invite rumors. Not distant enough to seem rude. Every movement measured. Every glance restrained. Seojun tried to read his face, searching for something, anything, that belonged only to them. There was nothing. A quiet panic settled in his chest. Did I do something wrong? Did I cross a line without realizing? Is this his way of pulling away? Seojun, Jihyun said again, this time softer, but no less distant. You should head back. Your team might be waiting. You should go. Not stay. Not talk. Seojun nodded, even though the gesture felt stiff. Right. Jihyun glanced briefly toward the room, as if reminding himself of something unseen, then bowed politely. Take care. The words were formal. Empty. He turned away without looking back. The door closed behind him with a muted click. Seojun remained in the corridor long after, staring at the space Jihyun had occupied seconds ago. The warmth of his presence lingered, clashing painfully with the coldness of his distance. Seojun didn't know why it hurt so much. He didn't know about the warnings, the confrontations, the fear wrapped tightly around Jihyun's restraint. All he knew was this. After 4 long months, this was their first meeting, and Jihyun had looked at him like a stranger. And Seojun had no idea what he had done to deserve it. Jihyun closed the door behind him and let the polite smile fall from his face. The room felt too small. His manager and Chae-young's manager were already seated at the table, documents spread neatly in front of them, mid-discussion about schedules and brand negotiations. Moon Chae-young took the seat across from him, professional and composed, as if nothing out of the ordinary had just happened in the corridor. Jihyun nodded at the managers, listening, responding when required, but his mind lagged behind. Seojun's face kept intruding. The way his eyes had lit up for just a second. The way that light had dimmed when Jihyun stepped back. Jihyun curled his fingers under the table, nails digging into his palm. Don't look. Don't linger. Don't give them anything to notice. That was all he had repeated to himself the moment he had heard Seojun's voice. It had taken everything in him not to turn around immediately. To not close the distance. To not reach out. For months. 4 months of restraint, of carefully worded messages, of conversations cut short because someone might be listening. 4 months of convincing himself that distance was temporary, that it was necessary. And then Seojun had been standing right there. Alive. Too close. Jihyun, his manager said, pulling him back. Are you listening? Yes, he replied quickly. Too quickly. Sorry. Moon Chae-young glanced at him, her expression unreadable. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes told him she had noticed. She always noticed. The meeting continued, voices overlapping, numbers being discussed. Jihyun nodded at the right moments, signed where he was told, spoke when spoken to. All the while his chest burned. He wondered if Seojun was already blaming himself. The thought made it worse. I didn't mean it. I had to do it. But explanations meant nothing if he couldn't say them out loud. At one point, Jihyun excused himself under the pretense of taking a call. He stepped into the corridor again, his steps slower this time, heavier. The space where Seojun had stood was empty. Of course it was. Jihyun leaned briefly against the wall, lowering his head. His reflection in the glass panel across from him looked tired. Older. Like someone constantly bracing for impact. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. Seojun's name was still there, exactly where it had always been. He hovered over it. I'm sorry. Please wait. This isn't what I want. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. In the end, he locked the screen without sending anything. Distance was safer. Distance was survivable. Even if it hurt. Jihyun straightened, schooling his expression once more before. Returning to the room. The door closed behind him softly. And just like that, he chose silence again. During practice, Seojun couldn't seem to do anything right. He missed steps he had practiced hundreds of times. His timing slipped, sometimes too fast, sometimes painfully slow. At one point, his body moved on instinct, but his mind lagged behind, blank and unfocused. Every mistake felt louder than the last. The music cut off abruptly. Seojun, the choreographer called, frustration clear in his voice. Why are you making such rookie mistakes? The room went quiet. Seojun blinked, staring at the floor as if the answer might be written there. His throat tightened before he bowed deeply. I'm sorry. Jihyun stepped closer, concern etched across his face. Are you not feeling well? You've been acting strange ever since we came back from the diner. Seojun forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He shook his head, but the lie felt fragile, like it might crack if pressed any further. Take a break, Seojun, Taehyung said, voice calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. I'm sorry for causing trouble, Seojun said again. The words came easily, too easily. He bowed once more and left the practice room before anyone could stop him. The hallway outside felt too quiet. He headed straight to the washroom, locking himself into the nearest stall before moving to the sink. He turned on the tap and splashed cold water onto his face again and again, as if trying to wash away the heaviness clinging to him. Focus on yourself, he told his reflection silently. Just focus. He gripped the edges of the sink and finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, lashes damp. His lips trembled slightly, and he hated how obvious it was, how close he looked to falling apart. He looked like someone who had lost something important and didn't yet know how to accept it. Seojun squeezed his eyes shut and inhaled deeply. 1, 2, 3. He counted slowly, deliberately, the way he always did when anxiety threatened to spiral out of control. This routine had never failed him before. It was familiar. By the time he reached 10, his breathing had steadied. But the ache in his chest remained. The image of Jihyun surfaced again, uninvited, his distant eyes, the polite tone, the way he had turned away without looking back. Seojun flinched, pressing his lips together as if that might keep the memories from spilling out. Not now. He shoved the thought into the smallest corner of his mind, sealing it off with practiced precision. He could afford to fall apart later, after practice, after schedules, after everyone had stopped watching. For now, he straightened his back, wiped his face, and took one last deep breath. He would endure this, just like he always had. After the day's schedules finally ended, the manager dropped them off at the apartment. Everyone looked exhausted, quiet in that hollow way that came after too much practice and too little rest. Seojun was just about to step inside when his phone vibrated. He froze. The screen lit up with a single letter. His breath hitched. "You all go ahead," Seojun said quickly, forcing casualness into his voice. "I just need some fresh air. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Before any of the members could question him, Seojun turned and headed straight for the emergency exit. Taehyung watched him go, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything, just turned and followed the others inside. The heavy door of the emergency stairwell closed behind Seojun with a dull thud. Only then did he exhale. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding, every vibration of his phone feeling louder in the enclosed space. The rooftop was the safest place. No cameras, no staff, no accidental interruptions. No witnesses. By the time he reached the top, the phone had stopped ringing. Panic surged. He unlocked the door to the rooftop and stepped out into the open air just as he returned the call. "Hello," Seojun said immediately, voice breathless. Seojun. Just hearing Jihyun's voice made something inside him loosen and tighten all at once. "Are you done for the day?" Seojun asked quickly, words tumbling out. "Did you reach home?" He crossed the rooftop and sat down near the wall, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. The night air was cold, biting, but he barely registered it. "No," Jihyun replied. "I'm still at the studio." There was a pause. The kind that stretched too long. Seojun leaned back against the concrete, staring up at the dark sky, listening to the faint hum of traffic below. His fingers curled around his phone as if letting go might make the voice disappear. "Seojun," Jihyun said slowly, carefully, "there's something I want to say." Something in his tone made Seojun's stomach twist. It wasn't hesitation. It was resolve. "What is it?" Seojun asked. His voice cracked despite his effort to keep it steady. Another pause. "Seojun, do you think this is working? The words hit him harder than he expected. For a second, Seojun couldn't breathe. "What?" He sat up abruptly, his back no longer touching the wall. Why are you asking that, Hyung?" His thoughts scrambled, panic rising fast. "Did I do something wrong? Did I mess up again? Why are you thinking like this all of a sudden?" The questions poured out, unfiltered, desperate. Seojun's voice trembled as he continued, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "Is this because of Yuri Sunbae?" he asked. "Are you saying I'm not careful enough? That I might sabotage our careers? That I might give us away?" On the other end of the line, Jihyun closed his eyes. "No, Seojun," he said quietly. "It's not you. It's me." His voice wavered for the first time. "I don't think I can protect you if something happens." The words sank deep, slow and merciless. "But Hyung," Seojun pleaded, desperation flooding his tone, "we've been careful, haven't we? We've done everything right. Please, don't do this to me." Silence answered him at first. Then Jihyun spoke again, each word heavier than the last. "I'm sorry, Seojun. I think I need time. Time apart from us. I'm really sorry." Tears blurred Seojun's vision. He dragged in a shaky breath, his chest aching like it might cave in. "Hyung, can we at least meet and talk about this? Please." There was a long pause. So long that Seojun started to hope. But when Jihyun finally spoke, his voice was firm in a way Seojun had never heard before. "Seojun, I need time. Please." The call ended. The screen went dark. Seojun didn't remember lowering his phone. He didn't remember sitting back down against the cold concrete wall. He only remembered the silence that followed, thick, absolute, swallowing everything. He stayed on the rooftop long after the night deepened, staring at the lifeless screen in his hands. He felt nothing. No anger. No tears. Just emptiness. As if something vital inside him had finally gone quiet. End of chapter 4. That's it for today's video. Stay tuned for chapter 3. Thank you for listening to our story. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.